You're listening to the Vikes Verified Podcast. Welcome back to the Vikes Verified Podcast. This is episode 80. Me and Matt are in the booth. Very excited today. We got a very special guest. Harrison Phillips, defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings, will be joining us. We're going to talk all things Minnesota Vikings, you know, what that defense kind of went through this past year and how Harrison has liked Minnesota so far. The Vikes Verified Podcast is sponsored by Duke Cannon as well. Duke Cannon, local here in Minneapolis. Some of the best products you're going to find. Thick body wash. You need to go check it out. They're in Walmarts everywhere. It's very affordable. You're not going to go with another brand once you try this stuff. DukeCannon.com.
The Vikes Verified Podcast is also sponsored by Chill Boys, another Minnesota-made company. If you're looking to keep boys cool, crisp, and comfortable, look no further than Chill Boys bamboo boxers and brief. The Chill Boys no-friction zone combined with the cooling effect of the bamboo fabric will feel like menthol on your men parts. You'll be as cool as the other side of the pillow. Go check out Chill Boys and get you some today. Joining us on the Vikes Verified Podcast today is Vikings defensive tackle Harrison Phillips. Harrison, how we doing?
Doing solid, man. Happy to finally get on.
Yeah, appreciate you having you on. I really want to highlight to start off something off the field for you. No denying your talents on the field, but this past season, you were the Minnesota Vikings Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. What does that honor mean to you, and what was the experience like out at the award ceremony?
Yeah, it's always so interesting to talk about because you never go out into the community and say, hey, how can I win Walter Payton Man of the Year? Like, it's never been an about me thing. A byproduct of the work that I do happens to be being recognized for that nomination. The first time I was nominated in 2020, I actually didn't know about the award. I didn't really know what it was at all. And then my teammates voted for me. And I realized that it's like the biggest accomplishment I've ever had in my life. And so to be nominated now 3 times, this last year was the most special just because I haven't been in Minnesota super long. So my foundation is really like baby steps of what it can really be once we really get things rolling. And it was such an honor because there's so many guys who've been doing things in Minnesota for a long time. And I even know like a year ago, Coach O'Connell let me know that I was almost nominated in my first year there by just a couple votes. Mm-hmm. So it's really special. And I know we have just a ton of guys on the team doing a bunch of stuff. And to answer the second part of your question, down at the Super Bowl in Vegas, it was really cool. They did it really well again, but the Vikings made me feel super special in the way that they celebrated and announced it. And then when we went down for the Man of the Year stuff, the NFL Honors is always a super cool event. And we were able to partner up with Nationwide and do some community service at a Boys and Girls Club while we were down there. So they did it right.
That's awesome. Sweet. I really appreciate your efforts off the field. And you brought up your foundation. That's a large impact of what you do off the field through Harrison's Playmakers. Can you give fans a little bit more of an insight maybe on what that foundation is all about and how you guys really impact lives off the field?
Yeah, I mean, Cliff Notes version is my foundation. We work primarily with individuals with developmental differences and special needs. So a lot of individuals with Down syndrome, autism, but I like to say that my heart's fairly unbiased and has a lot of love to give. So we work with pretty much anyone, cancer survivors, individuals who've lost limbs, spina bifida, visually impaired, deaf community. We have a ton of different Harrison's Playmakers. Our youngest are in the age of 5 and our oldest are in their 50s. And we try to flip that negative perception out there. You know, a lot of people say the disabled community or people who have developmental disabilities. Yep. And I never say the word disabled or disabilities because I feel like everyone has their own different abilities. So there's plenty of things that I have like 1,400 Harrison's Playmakers across the country, and I can find a handful of things that each one of them do better than me. So does that make me disabled in that category? No, we're just differently able. We have different abilities. My year-round activities, my biggest event is my summer sports camp, which tries to instill the character and morals that sports teach to a population that doesn't get sports. Yep. And so to have a visually impaired individual who's been blind their entire life catch a football or learn how to throw a football, something that they never would have thought of. But then they might go from that station to a petting zoo station, and then they're playing basketball, and then they're at a face painting station or a bouncy house. I mean, we try to make it super fun and incorporate a lot of, like I said, those morals into it. But it's not just like a one-off sports camp. In 2022, we did like 31 events across my 3 cities. In 2023, I think we did just over 24. And this year we're on pace for another 20 or so is what our plan will be for 2024. And renting out a pickleball, doing a pickleball tournament in Minnesota, renting out all the pickleball courts for some kids and their families coming up here. Rented out, like I got 300 kids going bowling in one of my cities. I got a pizza machine rented out in one of the cities. So just a ton of stuff. And I know I'm speaking along on this, but you guys know I care so much. I'm passionate about it. I think the really cool thing that we do that's different than maybe some of the other stuff is to flip that negative perception I told you out there of people who, want to throw pity to this group of people, is show these guys are so independent that not only can they come to my camp and do all these great things and show out, they also serve in their own communities. So I'll put on events where my playmakers are the ones that are cleaning up a park or going and doing community service. And at every single one of my events, I'll get with another local nonprofit. So in the Twin Cities, we work with Secondhand Hounds, we work with Warrior Dog Rescue, we've worked with the Veterans Association, and we'll just get a wish list of items that they need. And so all of my camps are completely free, or all my things I do, but sometimes we'll say like, hey, price of admission is a donation to one of these causes. And we've raised tens of thousands of dollars for other local nonprofits through the playmaker, not me doing it, through my playmakers wanting to give back and show the world I can be a great piece of the society.
Yeah, that's incredible stuff. Being able to expand that outreach, like you said, and I think it's an important thing for people to try and adopt that mindset, like you said, to having different abilities. I think that's a tremendous perspective and way to look at things. And I'm glad you're getting recognized for those efforts that you have off the field. It's truly inspiring from everyone looking on the outside, and I'm sure that when you get to the NFL honors ceremony and really take that in, I hope you're able to feel really good about that, because it's a very inspiring thing for sure. I do want to flip to a little bit more on-field talk. So this past year for you, 3 sacks, 92 tackles, 6 QB hits. It was really, a career year for you, statistically speaking. Made a ton of big plays, ton of big run stops for us. What do you think it was about playing in Brian Flores' defense and playing in this a little bit different system that helped you kind of take it to the next level this past year?
Yeah, I think that it was an interesting fit in Flo's defense. I was kind of interested when he brought it in, trying to figure out where I was going to fit perfectly for the scheme. And I think it helped for the fact that I'm, fairly undersized in terms of my body weight for a true zero nose guard in the league. I would say I'm, pound for pound, just as strong as any of those guys in there. But sometimes just having that extra mass helps. Well, so much of our defense is the full line movements, and you're constantly stunting gaps, sometimes even 2 gaps. And if you're lined over a guy and I'm moving, well, he knows the snap count. And if he's moving that same direction, I got to have enough quicks and strength to try to get in front of that blocker who's already going the direction before I can get moving, if that makes sense. And so you kind of need a little bit more agile nose. I think my ability, kind of some of my wrestling background really helped a lot in this defense, because you're moving so much laterally. To feel the balance of the offensive lineman you're entangled with, to gap and a half a lot. So it's supposed to be more of a one-man, one-gap defense, but I could understand and just have feel of leverage, like, all right, this gap is going to be blocked off by how much momentum I have of this offensive lineman. So I can shed now, and I can go ahead and make a play 2 gaps over, because I can feel his momentum. He's not going to be able to stop when I stop. We call that like gap and a half. And so, if you watch a lot of my film, most of it is like, hey, I'm in this A gap, I'm in this A gap, and then I feel the running back's going to cut, and then I'll shut off and make the play in another gap. And they're not sexy plays. They're not, super crazy plays, because I'm normally at the bottom of a lot, or we can kind of combine on some tackles together, a lot of assisted tackles. But it's grimy in there. It's so freaking fun. Like, I really enjoy that. It feels like I'm at war. I'm in the trenches. I'm in a wrestling match. It's super fun in there. I would say the counterpoint, the pass rushing stuff, what makes it a little bit more difficult is there's kind of two buckets of our defense. Number one, we pressure so much, ball's going to come out fast. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't, like as a defensive lineman, I can't go do a pass rush move because this ball is going to come out so fast. I'm in a mindset of like every meal, every meal is not a feast, or every meal is not a banquet.
Yeah.
Ball's going to come out quick enough. Let's just try to bat a ball, or let's try to get in the lane.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, I just explained to you, we move laterally so much. So on these run plays, I got to step as fast as I can laterally to try to beat this guy across his face. Well, if it's a pass play, I'm stepping laterally as this guy is retreating in a pass pro stance. So I just lost ground. He got a set. I'm not attacking him. And they get a little bit more comfortable. And again, ball comes out so fast. So that's one of the areas that I feel like I would love to see my production jump. But I've never been a guy that's going to go be selfish and try to be a me guy. The
Mm-hmm.
defense calls for me to take this step first. I'm going to take this step first. Now, there's definitely times and places where, hey, it was a one-on-one rush. I knew it was a pass, and I'll have to work on those things this offseason so I can be more productive in those roles. But I think that's what's been great about our defense is you had a lot of players who kind of bought into like, hey, this is what my role is going to be. I'm supposed to step this way. I'm supposed to step this way. I'm a hot quarters safety. Whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Guys kind of bought into that, and that's why we had some success.
I love that, and
Definitely.
I like that quote you had. Every meal's not a feast, and especially when you got guys that can rush the passer like Ivan Pace and Josh Metellus behind you. Getting the opportunities to get through the line. So, just looking at I would call it defensive innovation from Flores, from the previous defense and Ed Donatell's defense, and then what we saw this last year with obviously the unorthodox fronts that you guys show, all
Blitz
the pressure,
percentages.
and as well as that late shift you do just before the snap, try to draw a false start from the offense. I thought that was something that I had never really seen before. I thought a lot of people might try to adopt that after. I think specifically one of the times that goal line stand versus the Falcons, you guys were able to make, just absolutely had them in shambles offensively, not knowing what was going on. You're able to draw them a false start there, and I just think it's so much fun to watch. The aggressive mentality, I'm going to attack you rather than reacting to what you're doing, has been a ton of fun to watch. How much different would you say it is playing in a defense like that as opposed to a more traditional defense like Leslie Frazier's in Buffalo?
Yeah, I appreciate you having kind of compared to a lot of the defenses I've been in. If you do want to go back even just to 2022 in Minnesota, we had so much fun. We had a lot of freaking fun, and we were
Mm-hmm.
playing defense. And like, yes, it wasn't always pretty, but we were doing the defense how we were supposed to. Like, the yards were this and the whatever. But there was a reason that we won the North. Like, we
Yeah.
had to show
Exactly.
up in the times and make the turnovers, and we did what that defense was asking us to do. And that was kind of to your point. Like, we're going to give these teams, 5-yard hitches and 6-yard slants, and we're going to play light box. Are they actually going to stick to that for 60 full minutes?
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, what they do, they threw us one, or they'd get
Yeah.
fancy and they'd fumble something. And again, we came up in those big times. This defense in 2023, like you said, a lot of cool schemes. Flores' ability to understand guys' strength, and hey, to your point, the guys behind me, hey Harrison, why don't you go try to occupy these two guys so I can run Ivan Pace through this gap? And I also,
100%. Why wouldn't
knowing I'm
you?
a, yeah. So, and as a player, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Let's get these guys some money. Um, Leslie Frazier's defense was really cool, and I'm really thankful for that. My time in that defense, when I finished in 21, we were the number one defense in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cool thing that I can kind of put next to my name for the rest of my life, is I was a part of the number one defense in the NFL in a season. And that is exactly what you said: one man, one gap, 4-3 downhill defense.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have to that defense. You have to have. I can't remember the exact word we would use, but just disciplined. You had to be disciplined. And
Yeah.
what was cool in that defense is if a huge run hit, everyone in the entire defense, all you guys doing this stuff, Pro Football Focus, everyone could pretty much tell you whose fault that was, because we were a one man, one gap defense.
Mm-hmm.
In this defense we're in now, I have no idea how y'all can say who had
No,
a good
people
game
don't
and who
know
had a
the
bad game.
assignments. Yeah.
And I have no idea. I don't read too much into it, but obviously we get tagged in this stuff all the time, and I don't get like how certain people's PFF grades can be this and be that and whatever.
Yeah.
Like this defense is so complex. There's no way y'all can sit there and be like, oh, it hit in the C gap. That's that player's.
Yeah.
Nah, he's just the closest one to it.
Yeah.
That's not his gap.
Yeah.
So that I mean, I guess it makes it a little more dicey for you guys, and it's cool that in house we can kind of clean that stuff up, and instead of like mother effing one player on this one play, there'll be a collection of like 3 players who all could have done something better to have impacted that play. So it's cool.
Yeah, PFF is very confused at what Josh Metellus' role is. I'll say that to say the least. But yeah, it's very hard to track for sure.
Yeah, that's a really great breakdown. I think very in depth and really shows the intricacies of each defense and how different responsibilities can be and how you have to be successful in that. So really enjoyed that in-depth review. I have a great question for you. This is more recent news. Today, the NFLPA dropped report cards, and the Vikings, again, ranked very highly, coming in at 2nd out of 32 teams. And while we graded high in a lot of areas, one area that stood out to us was the head coach, Kevin O'Connell, receiving an A+ grade from his players. You came in here at the same time as Kevin O'Connell. What has your experience been like playing under him, and what are some things that make him such a great head coach?
Yeah. Kevin's incredible. Yeah, there's, it's also, I'm also a player on his team, so could I ever say a bad thing about him?
Yeah,
Probably
fair.
not. You know what I'm saying? Interview me 10 years from now when I'm retired long-term Viking, and I'll still tell you the same thing. But yeah, man, what he's done it was super incredible. I think it's funny, last year I remember like before our first couple games or our first home game or first road game, I remember like, he goes around, he says, like hyping everybody up, whatever. I'd embrace him, be like, hey man, like good luck. Like in a really sincere way. He's worked his entire life, or at least the last X amount of years, with the goals to be an NFL head football coach, and he accomplished that at a very young age. And so, like, I would check in with him as he feels like he's drowning as a first-time head coach, not even knowing he's just kicking ass in that role. And now that he had a whole nother year with it, and yeah, our season faced so much adversity, but with the injuries we've gone through and the stuff that happened, if you can go from a bird's eye view, you can see that we're still tracking towards the right direction.
Absolutely.
And that's because of his leadership. It's because of the people that he brings in. It's because of his thumbprint that's on our whole organization and how he treats the custodians, the custodial staff that's there, to the ownership and every player that comes in between. I think his best qualities are that he's not trying to be like a people pleaser.
Mm-hmm.
He's not trying to like say one thing because that's what you want to hear. He's just like who he is. And most of the time that's like really, really positive. And most people have only positive interactions with him. He obviously has the offensive mindset of like he's a guru in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen the success of that. And he can connect with players really well. And I don't like using the term player friendly, but that is the environment that we've created. It's because as a player, it's a friendly environment to be in. That's why we're ranking so high on these surveys, is because we have this great culture that he's been preaching since he came in, and we've been building this thing. And now I think what we've addressed this offseason, some of the things that we're going to figure out is how does our awesome approach that players love to play in, we're going to really find our identity and come up with what the Minnesota Vikings standard is. And once that kind of gets hashed out, we can find a perfect blend of where guys are really loving life, coming to work, we're playing really good football because we've set a standard of what that looks like.
Yeah, something that's really been impressive to me is, he's really been able to instill that culture, like you mentioned. One thing that he talks a lot about is that kind of leadership program group that you guys have, a kind of handful of 5 to 10 different players, of veterans and some younger guys that really they lean on for that support, really getting a feedback from what the locker rooms may be saying. And like you said, maybe connecting on that player level that allows them to open things up a little bit more. So have been nothing but impressed with Kevin since he's been here. Also, during your time here, have you had a favorite game so far out of your 2 years? What's really been the one that might stand out? I think we could take a guess, but.
Yeah, I got 2 that kind of first come to mind. I think number 1 is the return back to my old home of in Buffalo.
It's the best game in the
It
last
was like
5 years in the NFL.
yeah, I mean, it could have been a lot of people's game. But to go back with the emotion, the stuff, and I was battling a pretty significant injury. And so, all that plus like when I got there, um, because Western New York is such a smaller community, maybe you guys kind of see some of the stuff on social media and stuff, but
Oh
I
yeah.
was able to get out and do a lot with the fans over there, quite a bit, and my foundation grew tremendously there. I'll be going there in like 2 weeks, and I opened up a Harrison's Playmakers event. It sold out in 14 minutes.
That's
Hundreds of
awesome.
kids and their families going. I mean, so it's really going strong there, and as I was there for for over 4 years, you just have more time, and I'm excited for that to keep growing here and in the Twin Cities. So when I went back, that 45 minutes of free time I had, they rented out a spot, and I had like 45 or 50 friends and family that I met in Buffalo that I would call like my Western New York family now. Um, and I did that quick, and then I had like 15 minutes. I was able to go tap in with like 100 of my playmakers. They're all at somewhere. A bunch of them came to the game. My wife was there. She doesn't go to a ton of away games, and so there's just all this emotion. Plus, like back in Buffalo, they're like the best team in the NFL every
Hmm.
freaking year.
Passionate
And
fans
Josh
like
being one of
ours
my
too.
yes, and Josh being one of my best friends while I was there, and just the D line, everything, how it all worked out. And we had a ton of people in 2022 that had those quote unquote revenge games. Like we had a lot of guys that were going back and playing their former teams. So that game and the way it finished, and the Eric EK touchdown in the end zone, that insane. And then my other game would be this year. I know it wasn't incredible because of how we lost Kirk, but selfishly, it was one of my better games in the NFL
Hmm.
when we played Green Bay.
Hmm.
I think I had maybe 9 tackles. I was in on a sack, had another couple of hits, like two goal line stands at TFL. Like when I go back and watch that film, I was like, okay, if I played like this, if I
We're
could be pretty
good.
damn
Yeah.
happy. If I could do
Yeah,
this, if I could do this 4 or 5 times a year, we'll be doing some good things. So I think about those two games being um, my favorites.
that's
Definitely.
awesome. We were in attendance, and I can say we remember that performance
Oh
from you,
yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
quite the game, man. Their fans, all they had to cheer for was a completed pass or a first down at that point in
Yeah.
the game. But you did touch on Kirk Cousins, so I do want to talk a little bit about Kirk Cousins. Obviously, he is a big time puzzle piece in this culture you guys have created. Pretty much adored by all leaders on the team, front office, head coach. Everyone loves Kirk Cousins. It's hard to say a bad thing about Kirk Cousins. So, just what do you have to say about his current situation? And obviously, I think a majority of fans are hoping for a return, but from a leader on the team's perspective, what does Kirk Cousins mean to the core of this team?
Yeah, it's so hard. I agree with every single thing that you've heard from every single player. There's not a negative thing to say about Kirk. He is everything he is, that you guys have seen, that the Netflix documentary showed. He's that even more authentic, and he's that times five. I mean, he really is. He's everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I also want to like understand my role and stay in my lane for the fact that like I also trust the Minnesota Vikings, and don't I understand that they want him back they know what we all want. They know what and it's still a business at the end of the day. So however
Yeah.
that works out, my cards are obviously like even before I signed with Minnesota, when we played the Vikings in 18 maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and I
That
had a
was
play
when Josh
against him. And I'm
hurdled
like,
Anthony Barr.
yes, but like I'm sitting here watching the film like, dude, why is no one talking about this dude?
Hmm.
He's elite,
Yeah.
and he's just like dicing dudes up, one of the most accurate passers in the league. And for years he definitely had my respect. And then when I was a free agent, I wasn't trying to go to I was really blessed to have a couple of offers or a handful of offers in free agency, and I didn't want to go to an organization that I didn't think had the chance to win now. And when I'm like, this is our starting quarterback, and yeah, that other wide receiver we have helped the case too, and
Mm-hmm.
that edge rusher we had helped the case, and that safety and whatever. But like to have that quarterback steering the ship, made the decision like, oh, this is a win now organization. So yeah, from a non-business and football standpoint, I love that man. He's been super influential to me as I'm growing in as a husband and maybe starting a family in the coming years or whatever. To see him like that's been incredible, and the way he handles his business. I don't know if there's any. If you look up, National Football League professional player, a professional athlete. I think he's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Another benefit of playing for the Minnesota Vikings is being a teammate of Justin Jefferson, one of, if not the best wide receiver in the league. What's it like being a teammate of his, and how special is it being able to watch him on a daily basis during the season do what he does at such a high level?
Yeah, he's the best football player that's ever catched a football in the history of football. I mean, he's incredible. And I remember telling him in 22, like first time kind of getting to know him, and he's breaking all these records, first team All Pro, Pro Bowl, this, that, whatever. Um, I just remember telling him how impressed I was at how humble he was and how much of a normal character he was. And I didn't know him. I've only been there a handful of months, and offense and defense is pretty split up, or it's linemen and skills. So I didn't really get to create a great relationship with them, but it was early on, and I was just one of those first conversations I had with them was just it's it's not like I've been around the block for years and years and years, but in my time in the NFL, I've never seen a player as good as you are um, carry themselves as humble and chip on their shoulder as you do. And that's still kind of the message I have to him to this day. He's accomplished more in a handful of years than most of us will ever accomplish in our entire lifetime. And he still feels like he hasn't hit his ceiling, and he still works, and he still cares. And the 16th man on our practice squad roster could go up to him and say, "Would you mind signing this for me?" And absolutely, man. Who you want to make it out to? What color Sharpie you want?
That's
Like, he's a
awesome.
great freaking dude. If you ask, surveyed an intern female in our PR or community relations or staff in the cafeteria, if you ask them, he's ever treated them disrespectfully, or like, he'll look them in the eye, he'll shake their hand, he'll be polite. You don't get that from a lot of superstar best in the worlds. The football speaks for itself, but not everybody can touch on that piece.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's special to watch, and like you said, I think he does a great job of blending, being able to flip that switch when he's on the field to becoming a very lethal, serious weapon out there, and then off the field you just see that lighter side, that really side that he can connect with everyone. So super excited that he's in Minnesota, and hopefully we can kind of lock him down so we keep him purple and gold.
Yeah, he's a special player. Like we've talked about, I think the core of this team is so good, and the leadership. It's no secret that people are starting to take notice of that, and you think in the future that's going to translate to some really big things in the next coming weeks. Obviously, there's a lot going on: combine, draft, free agency. It's going to be kind of a whirlwind. In terms of your offseason, obviously you're spending some time in Arizona now. Obviously, you're taking care of business training, but I want to ask, what does the golf game look like down there? And, what's your best attribute on the course, and what are you really trying to focus on?
Man, that's funny. Yeah, this is so for background for the listeners or whatever. From Omaha, drafted at Buffalo, then Minnesota. So like cold, colder, and coldish. And for 7 off seasons, I've dragged my girlfriend, then fiance, now wife, to all these cold ass places. We lived year round. We own a home in Minnesota. We've pretty much stayed in Buffalo year round. And so finally we're like, let's go do something a little bit nice. I came out of the season relatively healthy, no surgery. And so we came down here. I've been training down here at a great facility, and there's actually a handful of Vikings that are down here, so I've been able to hang out with a lot of them. And I'll be back in Minnesota here in a couple weeks. But we've been golfing a little bit. Blake Brendell's down here. Garrett Bradbury's down here.
Okay.
Former Viking Kyle Hitton is down here. Former Viking Ezra Cleveland. B. Murph is down here.
Okay.
Even Greg Mance, who spent some time with Minnesota this year for a couple weeks. There's just a good little crew we have. So I've been golfing with them a few times. And any other year you ask me what I bring to the golf course, I bring absolutely nothing except for drives.
Yeah.
Like any other time you ask me, I can't do shit, but I bomb that freaking ball. Like, I got a couple long drive trophies at the crib. I've won a driver at this thing a couple of years ago for winning longest drive, all that, whatever. This year, don't know where the fuck it is. Can't find it.
Really?
It's nowhere. I'm about 3 or 4 holes away from teeing off with a 4-iron.
Oh man.
But yeah, I don't know. I shot like a 94 the other day. We're playing some pretty nice courses out here, pretty tough courses.
Oh yeah.
I'm bogey golf, and I'm pretty relaxed when I play. So
Yes, sir.
I can fluff up a ball here or there, and breakfast ball off the first tee.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's more about the camaraderie and the good stuff. But hopefully I can find this drive because I'm playing in that NFLPA golf tournament and I've been talking it up for like years. And all of a sudden
Yeah.
I've played like 5 rounds this year and I don't think I've driven the ball 320 yards once. And normally that's like a 50-50 occurrence at least. So I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I did. I thought I saw one Instagram story of you. It could have been your wife that posted you in a simulator. It was well over 300 carry, easy. So I assumed, that was probably the best attribute of the game. But
I don't know where it's been, dude. I'm telling you, like, and it's everyone's always like, fluffing up their stories and I caught a fish this big type thing.
Yeah.
But like, if you golf 18 with me normally in a year, you can ask my high school buddies or whatever. If we went out and golfed 18, like at some point in that day, you'll see 360 at some point for sure. I mean, and if it's downhill and if there's a wind, you might see something higher.
Yeah,
than that.
4.
I hit some of these drives the other day, and we're driving up to it. I'm like, this cart can't be right. This is not a 276 drive, right? I got up on my toes on this thing. Like, you're telling me I'm 280 out here? And so I don't know what it is. We're gonna have to figure something out, but it's all good.
That's awesome.
That's great to hear, man. The camaraderie on the golf course can't be beat. So I'm glad you got a good crew down there and you guys are playing.
Yes, sir. Keep getting dialed in on that game, man. You got some time before that big event, but have a good off season. Really appreciate you taking out some time, and we're really looking forward to next season. Have some really excited for the things that are to come and the future of the Minnesota Vikings. So thanks again for taking some time out and giving Vikings fans a little bit more insight on who you are on and off the field.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, take it easy, Harrison. You let us know if you need anything from us. We got you anytime, and we're excited to see what the future holds for you and the team.
Yeah, awesome.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Harrison. Well, hey, man, like we said, good luck with the golf game, and if there's anything we can help you out with down the line, just we're always a DM away.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
Take it easy, man. Enjoy the rest of your time down there. What a pleasure having Harrison Phillips join us, get some insight into what his offseason looks like and his experiences here in Minnesota. That was a ton of fun.
The Vikes Verified podcast is sponsored by Will Anderson Insurance. Are you looking for car, auto, or home insurance? Look no further than Will Anderson Insurance. He will find you the best deals, and we can't promise you he'll save you money. Let's just say you should for sure get a quote, and I need to reread that, so we're going to scrub that. All right, and we're going again. 3, 2, 1. The Vikes Verified podcast is sponsored by Will Anderson Insurance, a hometown native of White Bear Lake. He is a Minnesota-made man and a well-quality insurance agent. If you're looking to get a quote, reach out to Will Anderson Insurance and call 612-361-7283 or visit www.willandersonagency.com.
And the Vikes Verified podcast also sponsored by Jimmy's Dressings and Dips. You know about Jimmy's, made right here in Minnesota proudly. Originally from Stewartville, Minnesota, this is the brand you're going to want to garnish everything you have in your house with. Since their inception, they've always been committed to producing the highest quality dressings and dips, make everything in small batches using only the highest quality, freshest, and best tasting ingredients possible. Check them out at jimmysdressings.com. Matt, I want to talk a little bit about current events for the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, a big week at the NFL Combine. There's a ton of media out there. You finally get a little bit of clarity from our front office, GM and head coach, what they want to do. Yeah. What were your just immediate takeaways, 1 to 2 things that really stuck out to you from those comments?
Yeah, reading between the lines, Kwesi's usually pretty good at keeping a guard on what he says to the media, and he doesn't like drawing a lot of attention to him. But what really stood out to me was how he talked about Justin Jefferson and the way he spoke about him. He was very confident in how he felt, and he's the best wide receiver in the league, one of the best non-quarterbacks in the league, and should be compensated as such. Even going as far to say that he's seen a lot of stuff on the outside that is completely false, and that they were very, very close to a deal before the beginning of last season. And he also brought up how the camps from the Vikings and Justin Jefferson are on different timelines sometimes, and how a player can want to lengthen things out versus a team wanting to get him on the books a little bit sooner. So that was one thing that stood out to me. And then from Kevin O'Connell, some interesting comments. Again, he's always voiced his support for Kirk Cousins. Did so again at the Combine, speaking very highly of him. And also Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler did get a lot of hype in that running back room discussion. So that's a guy that should have some good looks for him, hopefully this next season in that running back room.
Absolutely, as he should. I mean, he was kind of, the only lightning we really had in the ground game this year. So Ty Chandler gets his respect. rightfully so. Kevin O'Connell, I think, the one quote that stuck out to me in regards to the negotiations with Kirk Cousins was, him just saying, quote unquote, ultimately knowing that both parties want the same outcome, I feel strongly that we're going to be able to get something done. So, this comes down to finding the right number, finding the right contract length, finding the right amount of guaranteed money. But, when both people want the same result, it makes it easier for, each party to compromise and find that middle ground. So at this point in time, I think we can both confidently sit here and say, barring an offer that really blows Kirk Cousins and his camp away, we think Kirk Cousins will most likely be the starting quarterback for the Vikings. Now, that doesn't mean we can't potentially draft a rookie at some point this year, but I think, for win now purposes and to keep our window open, Kirk Cousins should remain a Minnesota Viking.
Well, something that pairs with this situation as well is, yesterday we hired Josh McCown, former coach of the Carolina Panthers, former, longtime veteran in the NFL, very well-respected guy, especially in the quarterback room. We add him as our QB coach. I think that's interesting for multiple reasons. One, I love having him in our building. You now get to have McCown, McCardell, Kevin O'Connell, and Brian Flores. That's an elite coaching staff.
Absolute
that
powerhouse.
Has a lot of good recipe to it. So I like adding him to this coaching staff. Another thing that's interesting to me is that this could open up the potential of both re-signing Kirk Cousins and drafting a quarterback that could potentially sit for a year or two. You have a guy in Josh McCown who worked with Bryce Young last season, is obviously very familiar working with a rookie quarterback, has been spoken very highly of. There's actually a recent highlight from Johnny Manziel who speaks very highly of him during his time in Cleveland, even though it did not work out for him. Very excited for what he can do in Minnesota, and I think that it could be a very interesting addition thinking about adding a quarterback in the draft and has a connection to Drake May.
Yeah, the connection to Drake May really throws you for a loop, doesn't it? It's, in Charlotte, North Carolina, he apparently, started Drake May over his own son, which, when you see a talent like Drake May, it's probably pretty hard to keep him off the field. But I think that, immediately sparked a lot of, I would say, speculation from Vikings fans, but the realistic answer at the end of the day is, you don't know what's going to happen in the draft. So it's not like we brought Josh McCown in to coach Drake May and we're going to go make that move for Drake May. I think this is just a product of, trying to, like you said, get the best minds available in football to be in your building, and adding Josh McCown is just a surplus. If he can just bring a couple more ideas, a couple more schemes, find ways to get our receivers the football and communicate with quarterbacks, it's a positive addition. Absolutely. What are you most looking forward to this weekend at the Combine?
I'm looking forward to the QBs that will be thrown. I believe that's only McCarthy, is
Penix.
Penix, and is Bo Nix.
Bo Nix, I believe, yes.
And Rattler, I believe. So those four I'm really looking forward to watching as quarterbacks. I'm also interested in watching the edge position, Darius Robinson, Austin Booker, the defensive tackles in Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. There's a lot of talent on that D-line that we're going to need to keep an eye on, because if we don't go quarterback, defensive end might be the most next realistic position for us to draft in the first round.
Yeah, I agree, and I really love the quote from Darius Robinson today. They're asking about his 40 time. What are you going to run? What do you think you're going to run? He said, listen, I'm going to go out there and run as fast as I can, and that's the same speed I'm going to be running in the fourth quarter when the game's on the line. And I thought that was a tremendous answer. Obviously, he's a little bit prepped for this kind of thing. Biggest job interview of his life at the NFL Combine, but he's a name to watch. It won't be at 11, but, we have a little bit of capital with the 42nd pick. We got some players. Who knows? They could come up in the late first, early second for a guy like that. So I agree. I'm excited to see those two positions. Also excited to see some corners at work, see some of the fluidity of these guys. And I think the Combine does a great job of displaying the athletic ability of those corners. Let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to get it out there and just so people know that we're both fans of Spencer Rattler. And it's not a very popular take, I would say, because of, all the fame he got when he was 18 years old, 17 years old on QB1. Obviously had a horrendous attitude back then, treated his teammates poorly, but it's hard to sit here and say Spencer Rattler hasn't taken some leaps and bounds in terms of maturity, and the talent has always been there. But what can you say about Spencer Rattler at the Combine this weekend? And do you think he's going to maybe outperform some of these top tier guys?
Well, again, similar to J.J. McCarthy, the perspective or perception, I should say, of the national media and a lot of fans is that Rattler is, maybe not the greatest with his attitude and kind of character. Maybe was a little bit overrated as a high schooler going into Oklahoma. Ever since he transferred to South Carolina, I've heard nothing but rave reviews about him. He has improved his attitude, character, and really his work ethic. He was very successful at South Carolina, has the physical and athletic traits to be very successful in the NFL. Some may think he's a little bit undersized, but at the end of the day, he put numbers up, ran a very good offense at South Carolina, and then outperformed guys like Bo Nix and Michael Penix at the Senior Bowl and impressed a lot of NFL executives in the interview process. So again, he has a lot of potential this week. I think J.J. McCarthy and Spencer Rattler have the most to gain out of this QB group at the Combine. And if they can both put on a good showing, I see Rattler continuing to rise up boards. And if we weren't to take a QB at 11, I think Rattler could become a really realistic option in the second round.
I agree. And I think, the Combine doesn't do a tremendous job of showcasing quarterbacks throwing on the run. Typically, they're throwing from a 5-step drop or a clean pocket. But if you see some of the throws that Rattler can make on the run, absolutely live arm, changes arm angles. He can pretty much throw it anywhere on the field. So I think the arm talent's going to pop out to a lot of people, and I think he's going to outthrow Bo Nix for sure. It'll be tough to beat Michael Penix, I think, because of just some of the deep balls he's going to throw.
Yep.
But I think that Spencer Rattler's draft stock is going to climb, and from everything I've heard about the interview and coach and front office facing aspect of this whole thing, he's really improved and he's been really professional. So I'm excited to see, where people value him at after the Combine and what's kind of going to happen there.
Yeah, it's funny because, there is so much going on the field at the Combine, but people don't really understand how much goes on off the field at the Combine. There's a lot of conversations between GM, coaches, scouts. It becomes a big networking event, essentially. And I think, I'm going to be very interested to watch these guys this weekend, but also the news and rumblings that come from the Combine in the next, probably week or so that we're going to hear. This was the time last year where the Bears made that trade with the Panthers for the number 1 pick. So again, I think we're very close. We're nearing that March 13th date of free agency and the end of this scheduled NFL year. So things are really starting to heat up, and the rumblings are just going to continue to grow and grow, I believe.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting over the next few weeks. We're excited to cover all of that for you. We're going to be dialed in on the Combine this weekend, as should you. Maybe we can find the next Minnesota Viking this weekend. This is the Vikes Verified podcast, presented by Pull Tab Sports and part of the Pull Tab Sports Network. We're excited to keep covering this for you guys, and we're excited for the future of this team. Skol Vikes.
Skol.
You're listening to the Vikes Verified podcast.